Hey there, friends. Welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on Yanas TV. So sometimes you hear these stories and you just got to get them out there. And I get them out there not because I'm anti-government. It's because I want to bring attention to abuse of power. A lot of times this power is something where an agency feels that they have more power than Congress and decides to create their own laws and abuse the citizens. Or it's a case where there is a government worker or contractor who feels that because of their position, they have the right to just trample on people and abuse people. And so I like to tell these stories to open people's eyes to these incidences and hopefully, help bring justice to those who were impacted by this, but also just to build more and more awareness around these types of abuses so that as we move forward as a society and we continue to develop laws and we continue to look into how we want to plan, we can see these types of incidents and try and figure out a way to keep them from happening in the future, because this particular one is a bit wild. Real quick before I get into today's video, on Yanas Trading Co., we also now have bison tallow soaps. So we've restocked on the bison tallow. We've got bison tallow soaps. People have emailed me and asked me about the leather patch hats, the Defend the Right to Farm leather patch hats. We do have more of those coming in. I've updated the quantity on the website. You can go ahead and order them. They're going to ship out probably September 4th. So within a week and a half, they'll be shipping out. So you can go ahead and order those now if you're interested in getting a leather patch hat. This case actually involves a man. It's a rancher in Wyoming. He has about 100 acres there, named Tom Hammond. I think I said that right, Hammond. It's two N's on the end, so maybe Haman. I'm not the best when it comes to pronouncing names. Anyway, so Tom has this 100-acre ranch out in Wyoming. The Heart Mountain Irrigation District, we'll just call them HMID, had come out to Tom and they wanted to expand a roadway on what they said they had an easement for. Now, this was an unrecorded easement. I love unrecorded easements because it's like, oh, we have an easement on your land. Really? Where's the proof of it? It's unrecorded, but we have that easement. We're a government agency and we can do what we want. I'm not going to complain about this because I think I have a good rapport with my power company, but we have power lines on our property and they have an easement. And when we moved out here, I called them up, got all the easement information. It was 30 feet. Now it's expanded to 40 feet somehow. But luckily with them, because I've always worked with them, I've kept their easement clear as they come in and they're redoing power lines with heavier power lines. We've been able to help shift a lot of that so that they actually will have less invasive easement on our land than before. And I think it's good to have a good rapport, especially with anybody who has an easement that goes on your property, because they do have a certain amount of control. And when it comes to a utility company or a government agency like HMID, there isn't much you can do as a property owner. I mean, you could argue with them, you can go to court and you might win, but it's not like one of those things where they're coming onto your property without rights. But when it's unrecorded, I think it does create a bit of a legal battle because they didn't record it. And now they want to use this old unrecorded easement. So what they wanted to do here was they wanted to build a road along Lateral 79, which is a canal. And they claimed they had the rights and the easements to put this road in alongside the canal. And Tom was like, hey, look, you already have a road, over here, and you can access everything you need to access. There's really not, it's not necessary to have a road along Lateral 79. It's an unrecorded easement, so we're just kind of taking each other's word for it. Anyway, so the point is he opposed this roadway. This actually goes back to 2016, and I'm going to explain to you why this case matters now as we get into it, because it's, with a lot of these things, they progress over time. So in 2018, HMID came to Tom and said that they needed to remove a large concrete bowl used to irrigate a neighboring property. Tom agreed to this, to have him come onto his property to remove this particular bowl that was used for irrigation on a neighboring property. So he gave them permission to come onto his property, and the HMID crew, which was led by a guy named Randy Watts, comes onto the property, starts tearing down fences and ornamental archway. They're destructive. They're coming in there, destroying his property, and they are going beyond the scope of work that he had approved for them to come out and do. Of course, they were going beyond it because what they really wanted wasn't to remove this concrete bowl, but to actually start clearing the path for this roadway that they've been saying they wanted for 2 years on their unrecorded easement, and Tom has been opposed to. So as Tom goes out to approach these people, the supervisor actually hits Tom with the excavator in the neck, injuring him. So now they've destroyed his property. They have physically injured him. He is still physically injured to this day. Now, this happened in 2018, and it's now 2025. So these are long-lasting injuries that were caused by this supervisor for this government agency and their work crews. Because Tom went out, and rightfully so, if somebody came onto my property, even if it was, the power company, whoever it is, if they came onto my property and just started destroying my property without telling me that they were going to do that, even then, there are certain things that they don't even have the right to destroy, even though some of them think they have the right to destroy it. All he did was walk up to confront them. The guy turns the bucket and whacks him with it. And to make matters worse, Randy Watts' response to him is that he has more power than the sheriff because of the government agency he works for and the fact that they have an unrecorded easement. So in 2019, Tom goes in and files a lawsuit against HMID, basically saying, hey, look, you guys came onto my property, you destroyed my property, you physically injured me, and because you're a government agency under Wyoming state law, you're required to pay for your damages. What's funny about this case is HMID didn't deny any of the damages or the fact that their employee whacked him with an excavator. They didn't even try to go down that rabbit hole. Instead, what HMID's argument was that this government employee was acting without their explicit authorization. They didn't tell him to do it. They didn't tell him to take the specific actions that he had taken, and therefore they shouldn't be held liable for the employee that they have placed in charge of management of HMID while they have, I think they have quarterly or biannual meetings. And then the rest of the year, it's all left up to this particular guy, Randy Watts. But Randy's just an employee, see? He might be out there doing these things and managing the HMID, but because the board didn't specifically tell him to go onto Tom's property, destroy his property, and hit him with an excavator, they shouldn't be found civilly responsible, basically was their case. This case finally got overturned this year in the Supreme Court, so now he can go back and formally sue them in the lower courts of Wyoming. According to the court, HMID's narrow stance on liability is notably inconsistent with the very purpose of the inverse condemnation statute. The law is designed to provide a means for landowners to seek compensation when the government forgoes formal action. It is just a bizarre case of government overreach, and it just shows how a lot of these agencies are designed in their thought process and how they try and pass the buck when it comes to who's in charge, paying out injuries. But you could bet that if you did something to them, if you damaged their property, if you damaged one of their canals, they wouldn't care if your kid did it unsupervised. They'd come after you and sue you. So this case means that government agencies in Wyoming can no longer hide behind procedural loopholes. And it's important because a lot of these irrigation districts in places like Wyoming, these irrigation districts, the conservation agencies, and other local entities, in reality, these agencies operate with very little oversight, which is why this win in 2025 was actually fairly important. It reminds those agencies that the Constitution in Wyoming still matters, that they don't have the right to just come in and step over people, to come in and injure people, do whatever the heck they want to, and not face the consequences for their actions. They don't have the right to hide and say, oh, well, we didn't give him permission to do it that way. And I believe that Tom's next steps in this process have been to actually send a settlement to HMID, which would be, and I would think for them, it would be in their best interest to settle the case at this point in time instead of trying to continue to hash things out in a court that's not going to agree with them. But these cases are important. When we hear these things coming up, these cases of government overreach, these cases of government employees abusing citizens, damaging property, it's important that we make them known, as these are the types of things that have got to stop. These agencies have been out of control for a very long period of time. Anyway, guys, stay tuned for more here on Yanasa TV. We'll talk soon.
Ancient eras and natural selection have refined and tailored pristine fibers with the resilience for today's days. Evolving beyond the last ice age, bison wool is nature's most dependable activewear. Buffalo Wool Company, 100% proven by nature, 100% American made.
Check out the Buffalo Wool Company collection at yanasatradingco.com.